You already know these gods. Thor, swinging his hammer. Odin, the wise old king on his golden throne. Loki, the charming troublemaker. You've seen the movies 100 times. Now do yourself a favor and forget every single frame of them. Because the real Norse gods, the ones the Vikings actually bled and prayed to, were so dark, so bizarre, and so genuinely disturbing that they make those films look like cartoons for toddlers. The real Odin hanged himself. The real Thor once won a fight by wearing a wedding dress. And the real Loki? Loki once got pregnant and gave birth to a horse. So here's the question this whole video is built on. Just how different were the gods the Vikings truly believed in? The answer is almost unrecognizably different. These weren't shining, invincible superheroes. They were violent, deceptive, doomed, and far more human than any god has a right to be. It runs deep. Let's get into it. Start at the very top, with Odin, the All-Father. In the real myths, he is not some kindly, noble king. He is terrifying. Odin is the god of war, of death, of frenzy, and of dark magic all at once. And he is utterly obsessed with one thing above all else: knowledge. And the price he was willing to pay for it should stop you cold. To drink from a well that granted wisdom, Odin tore out one of his own eyes and dropped it in as the payment. That is why he is always shown with a single eye. But he didn't stop there. To seize the secrets of a powerful magic, Odin hanged himself from the branches of the great world tree, ran his own spear through his side, and hung there, starving, bleeding, neither living nor dead, for 9 days and 9 nights. He sacrificed himself to himself. That is your wise old king, a one-eyed god of the hanged who tortured himself half to death for power. Now Thor, and forget that tall, clean, blonde movie star immediately, the real Thor was a red-haired, red-bearded, wild-eyed mountain of a man with a monstrous temper and an appetite to match. He was raw, brute force with a beard. But here is the story that would make the Marvel version faint on the spot. One day, a giant stole Thor's hammer and refused to give it back unless he was handed a goddess as his bride. So how did the mightiest god in all the North get his weapon back? He put on a wedding dress. Thor disguised himself as the bride, veil, gown, and all, and let himself be delivered to the giant's hall, with Loki beside him, dressed as the bridesmaid. And the very instant that hammer was brought out to bless the happy wedding, Thor tore off the veil and slaughtered every giant in the room. The god of thunder saved the day in a bridal gown. Which brings us to Loki. And no, he was not Thor's brother. That's a pure invention. The real Loki was a shape-shifting giant, and he was something those movies would never dare to show. A god who was neither fully male nor female, and completely comfortable with it. Remember Odin's famous 8-legged horse? Loki is its mother. Loki once turned himself into a mare, seduced a powerful stallion, became pregnant, and gave birth to it. And that is the light-hearted part of his story, because Loki also fathered 3 children who are pure nightmare fuel. A giant wolf destined to devour the gods, a serpent so vast it coils around the entire world, and a daughter who rules over the land of the dead. The lovable trickster you laughed at in the cinema is, in the real myths, the father of the very monsters that will one day end all things. And it runs deeper than the gods themselves, right down into the ground beneath their feet. Because in the Norse story, the entire world is a corpse. Before there were any gods, there was a giant named Ymir, and the first gods murdered him, tore his enormous body apart, and built all of reality out of the pieces. His flesh became the soil, his blood became the seas, his bones became the mountains, and his shattered skull was hoisted up overhead to become the dome of the sky. In this mythology, you are living your entire life inside the body of a murdered giant. Now, to be fair, we have to remember that almost everything we know about these gods was written down centuries after the Viking Age had ended, by Christians looking back on a religion that was already dying out. So some of the details are filtered, and scholars still argue over the fine points. But the core of it, the darkness, the strangeness, the sheer violence of it, is unmistakably, undeniably real. And here is the one last piece I saved for the very end, because it is the most shocking of all. And it's the single thing that separates these gods from every superhero you have ever seen. Marvel's gods are invincible. They always win. The Norse gods? They are doomed. And worse, they know it. The Vikings believed in a prophecy called Ragnarok, the end of the world, a final, catastrophic battle where the gods must face their own monsters. And in that battle, the gods lose. It is foretold, it is certain, and it cannot be stopped. Odin will be swallowed whole by that giant wolf. Thor will finally kill the world serpent, then stagger back 9 steps and drop dead from its venom. The world will burn, and then sink beneath the sea. And every god in the heavens knows this is coming, knows exactly how and roughly when each of them will die, and chooses to pick up a weapon and stand and fight anyway. And that, in the end, is what makes the real Norse gods so much more powerful than any polished superhero ever could be. Not their strength, not their hammers or their thrones, but the fact that they are mortal, flawed, frightened, and doomed, and that they march out to face the end of everything without once flinching. A god who knows for a fact that he will die and lifts his weapon regardless is the single most Viking idea ever imagined. Because the Vikings never worshipped gods who couldn't lose. They worshipped gods who stared certain death dead in the eye and refused to look away. The real Norse gods were never a fantasy about living forever. They were a mirror, held up to the very men who believed in them.